Hello, everybody. My name is Matt Dreyer. I'm a Director of Product Management at VMware. I'm happy to have you join us today for our webinar on making hybrid cloud real. I'm joined today by Gary Chen, who is a research manager at IDC, along with Arthi Raju, who is a solutions architect with Amazon Web Services. I'll go ahead and hand the presentation over now to Gary to take us through the first part. Then we'll come back to some additional slides and wrap up the session with actually a demonstration of the capability of VMware Cloud and AWS. So with that, Gary, take it over.
Great, thank you, Matt. So today I'm going to give you kind of an overview of hybrid cloud, what it is, some of the trends, what's being adopted, how's it being used in the enterprise. So when we talk about cloud, there really is no standard path to cloud, and companies begin with cloud in many different ways, right? So some people will inherit it from an acquisition or merger, from the company they're acquiring was using cloud. Some start off with kind of a line of business or these digital transformation teams that go and start experimenting with new apps in the cloud. And sometimes it starts with central IT. A lot of times it's grassroots or it's a shadow IT type usage from developers who go out on their own and start using it. And companies can start out with a SaaS application, software as a service. Some start out with infrastructure, some with platform as a service. So there's really no standard way of how cloud should look in an enterprise or what the kind of maturity path should be. And people at the end of the day are going to end up with very different mixes of how much they have on-prem, how much is in the public cloud, which type of cloud services they use, whether they're using cloud native and traditional applications and what the mix is there, or whether they're using it for production just for dev and test. Or even all the way to having their mission critical applications. And there's a huge variety of use cases as well. Some people may be using it for the primary production compute. Some people may be only using it just for disaster recovery. Some people may be replacing entire data centers with cloud. So it's not all cloud will be the same. It won't all look the same. People will have different experiences over time. They'll begin to trust cloud in different ways over time. They'll have evolving policies around cost and data and security. And people will look, adopt it in different ways and different providers. And not all cloud is the same, just as all software isn't the same. You can have all different types of providers, and some will be better than others, and you'll have everything in between. So when we look at kind of cloud adoption today, over the past several years, we've been seeing a big shift in kind of traditional IT, shifting over to various cloud models. One is a private cloud, which is on premises or in a hosted private facility. The other one is really public cloud, and specifically looking at infrastructure only for the purposes of this discussion. It's really looking at infrastructure as a service. So both private cloud and public cloud are kind of growing at the expense of traditional IT. And if you look at the average mix here, most organizations are going to have a mix of all three of these. They still have a large amount of traditional on-prem, but both private and public cloud is growing. So the priority kind of going forward is how you're going to manage, integrate across all of these diverse environments. You want to avoid building more silos. And the interesting thing is that most customers we've talked to have repatriated some workloads from the public cloud, and that. So there's some bi-directionally, kind of migration happening. It doesn't mean that the cloud isn't working or that overall workloads aren't growing in public cloud, but there's lots of experimentation, and some people change their mind about what they want in the cloud and what they don't, and that's okay. But it's an important capability that we've seen. But overall, yes, things are moving to the cloud, and the majority of enterprises that we talk to are pursuing a hybrid strategy of some sort. So when we start talking about hybrid cloud, I think it's important to come up with some definitions, because hybrid cloud, I think people have really different understandings right now of what that means to them, in the current state of the market. So I think a lot of people confuse, kind of multi-cloud with hybrid cloud, and this is the most popular today, right? You have your on-premises, which could be a private cloud, and then you may be using various public clouds, some software as a service, some infrastructures, but they are really kind of separate environments, right? So they could have separate tooling and different interfaces, which often then turns into separate teams to manage them. And you can have some tools that that can consolidate some of that. So, but a lot of people use primarily the native tools, for the functionality and faster access to new features. But kind of the overall trend here is that workloads kind of in this scenario, they kind of stay where they're first instantiated. So if you first stand up a workload in this particular cloud, it stays there for the rest of its life. It doesn't move. And portability was not designed in from the beginning. So it can be difficult, time consuming, and expensive to move later if you didn't really plan for that. And so a lot of customers initially kind of pursue speed and features over portability. So every cloud becomes its own silo. So when you look at what hybrid cloud is about, hybrid cloud is really primarily about integration, right? So you want to have public cloud and your on-premises private cloud, integrated at very different levels, and this allows portability to happen both ways. You can move it to the public cloud and you can move it back, and the integration will it's not just one integration. It's a lot of different levels. It's the storage, compute, and networking layer. But the more integrated it is, the easier the management and the easier the portability. So when we look at what type of things it might take to make a hybrid cloud, to really have a really robust hybrid cloud will require many different types of integration. So we asked in a recent survey customers, kind of what features do you have right now of hybrid cloud integration, and what do you plan to implement in the next 12 months? We combined that into kind of showing where a lot of the interest is. So the top three is one, subscribing to multiple public clouds. A lot of people already have that. Secondly, a desire to use existing management tools to manage public cloud resources, creating more of a single pane of glass. And also subscribing to a public cloud that has the same infrastructure as a data center, for better compatibility with existing apps and having a familiar environment. So those have really kind of been the top three. But you see there's really kind of a long tail of other integrations that people are pursuing. This could be federating identity, having the capability for bi-directional workload management, having unified service catalogs, unified policies across both environments, having a single pane of glass, being able to burst into the cloud, having applications that can stretch both across cloud and on-prem, so kind of really running in both places at the same time, and having kind of a self-service portal, a single self-service portal across both environments. And so it's a very long list of all the possible things that you could do to have a hybrid cloud. So I think it's more important to probably think of hybrid cloud as really more of kind of a sliding scale rather than yes I have it or yes I don't. People can have it to varying degrees, and certainly this is going to evolve over time. So when we look at some of kind of what are the primary challenges to achieving hybrid cloud, and this is really kind of thinking about infrastructure as a service type clouds. A lot of the problems stem from that the infrastructure underneath. It really does matter when you talk about portability, and this is especially true for kind of traditional workloads have very close ties to infrastructure and infrastructure services. Any change in them requires changes in the app, or it can break something when you're moving it from one environment to the other. So the core differing infrastructures, whether it's a hypervisor, a virtual machine format, the type of networking and storage, that in itself will have a huge effect. And then, you look at all the things that are attached to it, right? So you have different sets of management tools. which then requires different skills, possibly different teams. You have operational differences, where kind of on-premises is your own environment with your own set of processes, and in the public cloud, a different set of processes, a more service-oriented type thing coming out of the public cloud. And so, it's not really that easy to move things from one place to the other. So when you look at let's say like the hypervisor, so yes, there's a lot of conversion tools that are out there that can convert from one VM format to the other. But conversion is really is just the beginning, right? So you have to look at it. If I'm moving to an entirely different compute environment, it may have different performance characteristics, right? So if you have really, sensitive apps, mission critical apps that are very performance sensitive, that have been highly tuned over time, you're going to really have to kind of test all of that when you move it to a different hypervisor. And hypervisors, even though they're really compute, but they have a lot of ecosystems attached to them, right? So you have kind of attached storage, you have attached networking. So a lot of apps, a lot of people have spent a lot of time and effort optimizing storage, even how it's laid out on disk and how it's protected and things like that. So if you move it, then you have to look at perhaps a different storage subsystem. When you move something, the network connections will change, the IP addresses can change. So, can the app find, this part, this database or something where it expects to find it? And of course, you have all these tools that, work with storage and networking around availability and backup. You have a lot of monitoring tools and things like that. So the point is, it's like when you move, from one environment to the other, you really have a lot of integrations and testings and certifications to think about. It's not really something where it's just really converting from one format to the other. Like I said, the data center environments are very complex. They're very interdependent, and people have spent a long time tuning things on-prem. And for really the more sensitive the app, the more problems that you'll have if something is different on the other side. And so, when we look at hybrid cloud, from an infrastructure perspective, the reality today is that to achieve, kind of full seamlessness, it can only really be achieved by having highly consistent stacks on both sides. And the more traditional your app, the more that kind of affects you, right? So, a lot of, cloud native applications can be abstracted a lot from some of the lower layers, but they still have other dependencies as well that can affect portability, different types of dependencies, maybe more at the framework level or at the app level. Not every app may need 100% fully consistent environments to be portable, but I think most existing apps will need a fairly high level to achieve some kind of seamlessness. So if you look at the stacks on different sides, right, this could be all the way up from the hypervisor, storage, networking, you get into identity, you get into the management, and the stack goes even higher beyond that, right? You're looking at, middleware and other APIs, data APIs, and things like that. But from kind of a more core infrastructure level, that's what it really takes in order to move an app without a lot of planning and effort and time, right? So, a lot of people have done migrations over time, right? I think anyone in enterprise has done some kind of migration from one platform to another, whether it's an operating system, whether it's a physical server, things like that, right? And so we're all kind of familiar with this enterprise migration. It takes a month of planning, a lot of time and effort, and it's typically kind of this one big operation that you do, right? So, but in hybrid cloud, if you really want to enable a lot of the use cases for hybrid cloud, you really want this migration capability that doesn't require tons of planning and cost to do that. So not necessarily say like every app can be moved in 5 minutes, but you want something that can be done in a reasonably small amount of time. In order for you to get some of the benefits and leverage some of these use cases, right? And so when you do that, so when you have this kind of seamless integration. You have very consistent stacks that enables this bi-directional portability. You can have really consistent operations because both environments are essentially the same. You really have transparent integration at all layers. So when you're moving things back and forth, you won't run into little issues that will, snag something up. And it only really takes, one small thing that could screw up entire migration. And some of the benefits of having this, right? So you kind of unify your tools, unify your skill set, unify your team, and you really have a much more seamless experience. And when we look at use cases, so what would people do if they had this this sort of hybrid capability? So there's a couple different categories. One is sort of data center extension, right? So I'm keeping my data center, not getting rid of it completely. But I just want to kind of extend that. It could be for kind of on-demand capacity, right? So if it's a seasonal event, it's a holiday season, and I'm doing a lot of sales, I need more capacity. Or if I want to expand into a new region, which I don't have a presence in, but perhaps I don't want to buy or permanently own capacity. I want to experiment and see if there's kind of business there. I can use that as temporary capacity, and as well as for like development, right? So if I'm testing something and I just need compute for a small amount of time. And the other common ones, we see a lot of disaster recovery where people don't use it as a kind of the primary computing environment, but in case of something happens, then I'll migrate everything over to that data center and run it from there, and as well as backup. The other class that we see is kind of really more wholesale migrations, where people are saying, I don't really want to be in the data center business. I don't want to be really kind of owning servers and things like that. And so I basically want to shut that down and move everything over to the cloud. And some of that may happen with kind of an infrastructure refresh. So people typically will keep a server for 4 to 5 years, and then at the end of that, when it's time when a server's kind of at end of life, they're saying, I'm not going to buy a new server, and I'm just going to move it to cloud. But they kind of time it with that refresh. As well, some people may kind of do more specific migrations, migrating very specific parts of the data center. Like, I don't want to run this app anymore, and I want to move it off premises. And the other general class of use cases that we see are really kind of next generation applications. So this could be a couple different areas. It could be, I'm taking this app with an older architecture, and I really want to modernize it. So that could mean refactoring, or I need greater scale. So I need to think about how to scale it out, moving it to the public cloud to do that. You kind of new application build out. So this could both be traditional architectures where I'm still using traditional development methodologies and architectures, all the way to kind of cloud native, where I'm really thinking about modern apps, perhaps containerized apps and microservices and things like that, doing that in the cloud, as well as kind of hybrid applications. It may be a little bit of both. A lot of people transform their apps in stages. So some of it might be traditional architecture, and they'll break off some of it and modernize it, and as well having applications that perhaps can run in both sides at the same time. So both running in a public cloud for some of the spiky applications and spiky workloads, and keeping a core set of kind of static capacity on premises. So kind of when you have this seamless hybrid cloud that lets you do kind of bi-directional portability, with very low cost, and with a minimal amount of planning, it can enable a lot of these things, and it can also allow you to change your mind about what the mix will be. So if you want to take something back, and push new things out, you can do that very easily. So these are kind of really the most common use cases that we've seen for this kind of emerging seamless hybrid cloud. And with that wraps it up for me, and I will be available at the end for Q&A. But I will now pass it back to Arthi from AWS, who will talk to you a little bit more about their offerings. Thanks.
Thank you, Gary. Hello, everyone. My name is Arthi Raju, and I'm part and also joining me today in the later half of the presentation will be Matt Dreyer from VMware. What we wanted to talk to you today is Gary talked about some of the common challenges with hybrid cloud and what are customers wanting when it comes to having that seamless portability and integration. So we'll walk you with an introduction of what VMware Cloud on AWS is, and then we'll talk about what are the consumption options available for the service. We'll also have some migration use cases, and Matt has a cool demo plan for you at the end. So with that, let's get started. So Gary mentioned some of the common challenges that we hear from customers as to like different hypervisors or having that seamless portability. So what we wanted to do with VMware Cloud on AWS is provide customers this truly compelling and differentiated solution that will help them overcome the challenges they have with having a hybrid cloud ecosystem. So AWS and VMware partnered together at VMware last year. We announced the service, and this was jointly engineered with both these companies. Customers have been using VMware for decades now. VMware has been a leader in the compute, storage, and networking virtualization space with a lot of customer workloads on them. What we wanted to provide these customers is a way for them to use the best of both worlds, get the best storage, compute, network virtualization from VMware, and at the same time have the flexible consumption model that customers prefer, paying on demand, and also having access to a broad range of feature sets that AWS provides along with the global infrastructure. So let's see what the solution itself comprises of. One thing that we wanted to make sure is provide customers the same look and feel and the same operational consistency that they have with their on-premise environment. So VMware Cloud on AWS is powered by VMware's Cloud Foundation, which consists of vCenter, vSphere, vSAN, and NSX. So these are components that customers are already familiar with their on-prem environment. The service itself is packaged together and is delivered by VMware. It's also sold by VMware and its partners. It runs on AWS's global infrastructure, which means customers can now utilize any of the AWS regions where the service is available. What's also interesting is a lot of these customers have an on-prem environment and the VMware Cloud on AWS SDDC. So Hybrid Link Mode, a new feature by VMware, provides customers a feature where they could connect their vCenters, which is a management component for managing their infrastructure. And once the vCenters are connected, customers can have a single pane of glass to manage both these environments. And that's a huge win because a common theme that we've heard from customers is I don't want to manage two environments in two different windows. I'm doing the same operations across both these environments. So this provides them a single pane of glass where they could see their on-prem data center and also their VMware Cloud on AWS SDDC environment. I mentioned that we've jointly engineered with VMware. We want customers to utilize the broad set of native AWS services available. So this engineering work involves a lot of these native AWS service integration, which means customers running a VMware Cloud on AWS SDDC now has access to all the AWS services that is available today. For example, customers could use Amazon S3 for storage, or even use some of our artificial intelligence and ML services. And I also mentioned that this runs on the AWS's global infrastructure, and AWS spans across the different continents today in multiple different regions. So with this service being available in multiple regions, customers could now take advantage of a region that is closest to their data center. As we're talking to customers and as the service has been available for quite some time now, we're seeing the same set of use cases that Gary mentioned in his conversation. So we see customers who are looking to extend their data center. They don't want to shut down their data center. It could be a use case where they want to just bring up a new region where they don't have a physical presence in. Or it could be burst capacity. And burst capacity is something very common in the cloud. You spin up a server where you want during your high peak season. So customers who are looking to do this can utilize VMware Cloud on AWS because now they have the ability to spin up a cluster in less than 2 hours and then have it up and running. And then also for test dev environments, a lot of customers, when starting, spin up a single node cluster, for example, which Matt will cover later, for test dev environments and have their developers access these test dev environments without having to worry about any connectivity or setting up a rack in their on-prem environment. The other interesting use case that we see is disaster recovery. Every customer needs to have a DR solution in place. And customers who currently have a secondary site or want to close a secondary site or replace their existing DR solutions, this comes in as a handy with VMware Site Recovery Manager included. So customers could utilize VMware Cloud on AWS as their DR solution, and eventually, if they want, migrate into another VMware Cloud on SDDC as their production workloads. The last use case, and this is a very important use case, cloud migrations. We're seeing a lot of customers into this cloud migrations use case. Customers might have a specific application that they want to migrate to. And today, if I say migrate, it's not as easy as it is, right? Customers want to have the same IP. Customers don't want to re-architect their workloads. And we wanted to provide a solution that can help them achieve that. So we're seeing customers utilize Hybrid Cloud Exchange or vMotion to migrate workloads, and it's bi-directional. It's not from on-prem to VMware Cloud on AWS. It could be done bi-directional as well. So we're seeing customers utilize these features that are available with the service to migrate their workloads from one environment to the other. And the final one is the next generation applications. And this is very interesting because you have customers who have this architecture that cannot be re-architected anytime soon, and they want to modernize this application. And this provides them the ability to quickly spin up an application, test out things with the new application, and migrate things over. So these are the 4 areas that we are seeing some of our customers in the past year utilizing the service for. What we also wanted to do is we know our customers utilize a lot of these partner solutions on-prem. So we wanted to make sure that we provide support for all our third-party technology partners. So if you look at the slide here, you'll see that it covers different verticals. So we have partners in our data protection space. We have partners in our networking space, security, DevOps, etc. So there's a wide range of partners that have been supported for VMware Cloud on AWS that customers could make use. And with that, I'll hand it off to Matt. Cloud.
Thank you, Arthi. Good day again from Matt Dreyer. What I'm going to do is take you through the rest of the presentation here. And really, what I want to focus on is the actual consumption of the service. So we've now been in the market for a bit over a year, and we really have evolved and reacted to our customer base to really make this offering as simple to consume as possible. And so we have got a number of different purchasing models that are available. We do have on-demand purchasing straight from the website. So if you go to cloud.vmware.com, you can actually just click a link and get started, lay down a credit card number, and deploy an SDDC today. We also offer more enterprise-grade purchasing options through sort of standard VMware transactional processes with SPP and HPP credits. Our service is sold on a per-host basis, and so the model here is an on-demand one where you provision a host and you pay on an hourly basis. We also have higher discounts available if you choose to deploy in terms of a 1 or a 3-year subscription. And so that will kick in some very nice discounting on top of the hourly rate. We also have a number of add-on services that I will show you, including VMware Hybrid Cloud Exchange, as well as VMware Site Recovery that allow for us to do very high capacity migrations, as well as very sophisticated disaster recovery workflows. The final thing that I'll talk about here is our hybrid loyalty program. Again, we want to reward VMware customers for staying with us and consuming our products both on-prem and in the cloud. And so customers can leverage this hybrid loyalty program to attain additional discounts on top of the pricing already available in the service. And so with these, more information, again, on the pricing models is available at cloud.vmware.com, and we invite you to take a look at those materials. I wanted to show a little bit of how the model works in terms of TCO, because we get a lot of questions about this. The important thing to note here is that when we price our service, we are pricing on a per host basis. So we really put a lot of control over the efficacy of the solution in the hands of the administrator. And so by provisioning on a host basis, you as an admin have the power to either oversubscribe an environment or undersubscribe it to meet the needs of your applications. So I just want to show you a little bit about how that works. If we start with the first part here, you'll see a set of curves that we've drawn out on the screen. What these curves represent are different models based on the density of virtual machines in the environment. So on the horizontal axis, you'll see virtual machine densities ranging from 0.8 VMs per core all the way up to 1.4 VMs per core. And what you can see here is we've drawn comparison lines comparing on-prem implementations to implementations on VMware Cloud on AWS to native virtual machines provisioned in cloud providers. And what you can see here is that this solution is quite a bit more cost-effective than on-prem deployments, and is actually very, very much competitive with native cloud deployments when you reach certain density thresholds. So again, depending on your workload and the performance characteristics of the applications you're trying to support, VMware Cloud on AWS has a very attractive pricing and consumption model, and can again be purchased in a number of different ways. And so we invite you to use any of our pricing calculators available on the website, as well as some of our migration assessment tools to really help dial in and start migrating your environment. Okay, with that, what I'm going to do is cut over and dive deep into a demo. So we'll jump straight into the product and kick around a little bit. I wanted to show off a couple of different parts of the service. I realize that many of you will not have had a chance to experience VMware Cloud on AWS, and so I'll give you a little taste of what we've got, and then we'll wrap up here with some next steps and some Q&A. So let me go ahead and kick my screen share here. Okay. So what you're seeing now is the user interface for VMware Cloud on AWS. And what you can see here is that I've already logged in. I'm logged into my organization. The system is, of course, multi-tenanted. And what you can see here is the main user interface. I've got a single SDDC deployed in my environment, and I have a number of other options available to me. One of the things that's really nice about VMware Cloud on AWS is that we've really taken the engagement model and the support model to the next level. And so in order to get support with this system, our customers simply click the chat button, and they fire up a chat and get their issues resolved in real time with a live chat operator. This has been incredibly powerful and well received by our customer base. And we continue to expand our capability there. Another thing I'd like to show you is just the level of in-product help that we've got. So we've done a great deal of work on it, creating FAQs and simple articles to really get you into solving most cases on your own. If you need to fire up an IPsec VPN tunnel or create a new network segment, or even use the API to deploy a virtual machine, we've got nice articles that have already been written up to help guide you. So why don't we dive in and just show you just how easy it is to deploy an SDDC. Again, the whole promise here is that you can deploy a fully functioning software-defined data center running in Amazon in just a couple of clicks and in under 2 hours. And so I just want to go ahead and show you how that works. So start off by clicking this Create SDDC button. When I click that button, I've got a nice set of options available to me. The first thing that I do is I specify the region that I'm going to deploy into. Right now, VMware Cloud on AWS is available in a number of regions. I'll simply pick a region that is of interest to me. So maybe we want to deploy in Frankfurt this morning. The next thing I need to do is choose the shape of my SDDC. We offer 3 different shapes. The first one is a single host, which is exactly as it sounds. A single host SDDC is very handy for spinning up quickly and doing some tests, or maybe you've got a CI/CD pipeline where you want to just run some regression sort of tests in. So these SDDCs do expire after 30 days. Within that 30-day period, you can either delete the SDDC or upsize it to a full production SDDC, including 4 or more hosts. Let me go through those other options. With the standard SDDC, a production SDDC, we support sizing from 4 to 32 hosts, and you can see that here. So I pick the number of hosts that I want to deploy in my SDDC. Again, sort of as little or as much capacity as you may need to replace either a single application, maybe a single rack, or an entire set of servers. And our final option here is to deploy a stretched cluster. This is actually one of my favorite features of the service. What the stretched cluster does is automatically deploys part of the SDDC across 2 different availability zones in the Amazon cloud. And so what this allows you to do is to get better adherence with the Amazon well-architected framework around availability. It allows you to bump up the number of nines supported for your applications without having to do any rewrite of the application itself. And so this is really one of the promises of infrastructure as a service, in that we can support applications and improve applications without requiring modification to the application itself. So I'll go ahead and uncheck that. You would give your SDDC a name. Next, we create a connection to our Amazon account. We've already performed this step. We simply connect to select an account that we're going to connect to. This allows us to gain great access, high speed and low latency access into these native Amazon services like S3, RDS, and EC2 instances. So creating hybrid applications back and forth between the Amazon side and the SDDC becomes very, very simple by creating this connection. Next step is to just finalize the connection into that VPC. Pick a subnet that we're going to connect into. Our final step is to pick an IP range for the management components of the SDDC. You can either go with the default or work with your network administrator to assign a special block for the use. After you do that, you click Deploy SDDC. Come back in 2 hours, and you'll see a fresh new SDDC that has been deployed. Really couldn't be much simpler than this. We've spent a lot of time working on the user experience here, and we think that we've got it dialed in pretty well. Now, once you have an SDDC up and running, you, of course, need to start consuming it. And so I'll go in and show you a little bit about that now. So the SDDC that I've got deployed today is called VMC Production. I can do some basic things to it. Say, for example, adding a host. So if I find that I'm running out of space, I can add a host to this cluster. I can also remove hosts. Or indeed, I can actually add an entire new cluster. Our SDDCs support up to 10 clusters inside them, and so you can actually support up to 320 hosts within a single SDDC. Once we get into the SDDC, you'll find a nice set of capabilities here. We've got some simplification that we've done for configuring networking. So creating firewall rules and IPsec VPNs becomes a very straightforward task. As I mentioned before, we've got a number of add-ons available that we've really baked very tightly into the service. So again, hybrid cloud extension for doing that high-speed migration of workloads from on-prem into the environment, as well as VMware Site Recovery for very simply standing up a DR target in the cloud, or as some of our customers have even done, start in the cloud and use their DR target back on-prem. little bit of troubleshooting capability here as well. I think we all know sort of how painful it is to debug networking stuff, and so we've done a lot of work here to put nice troubleshooting tools in front of you to really make bringing up hybrid connections very, very simple. And finally, the real goal of this whole thing is to get access to vCenter Server. And so we simply click the Open vCenter Server button. This will launch us a new tab that will give us access to the vSphere web client. And this really is the promise of the service. We are operating in a cloud environment, but we're using the exact same management tools that we do in on-prem. So the very familiar vSphere web client with the inventory list. You can drill in, take a look at all of your virtual machines, and operate this environment just as if it was running on-prem. Doing migrations of virtual machines is as simple as doing a vMotion. I select my virtual machine, do a migrate, and if I have my hybrid connections set up, I can simply vMotion workloads back and forth in and out of the environment. So with that, a pretty quick little overview and demonstration of the capability of VMware Cloud on AWS. But I think you get an idea for what we've built. The service continues to evolve and be enhanced over time. We've added something like over 200 features since our initial launch a year ago, and we continue to be very responsive to our customers and bring new capability into the service on a very frequent basis. I'll leave with one other piece that I like showing off. Again, this is very much a cloud experience, and so we've gone the extra step to really make automating and doing integrations with these environments very, very simple. And so we've built an API Explorer straight into the product. Again, these APIs are thoroughly modern and RESTful, and so with just a little bit of work, you can either hit these REST endpoints with your own custom code, or if you'd like to save a little bit of time, you can actually use our SDKs to do automation and configuration of VMware Cloud on AWS. As well. We've also got a bunch of hackers in the community that have been putting together code samples and interesting little integrations, and so those are available for you to explore here as well. So I think you get a pretty good flavor for the offering. Let me cut back to some slides, and we will wrap up. Okay. So where I want to go from here is to really encourage you to take a look at the service and to start exploring. Again, we do have an on-demand credit card-based offering available right now. If you want to go ahead and kick the tires, you can do so by hitting cloud.vmware.com/vmc-aws/single host access, and we'll give you an accelerator into that link as well. We've got an environment here, again, where you can provision an SDDC very, very rapidly. We have some additional discounts and promotions that we're running right now, such that the price of a single host SDDC is actually $5.60 an hour. So if you need to run an SDDC on Friday, you can do that at a very, very low price point. Again, allows you to very flexibly consume the environment, get in, kick the tires, and perhaps even expand and start using it for production workloads. And so a nice way to get into the service and start using today. I'll close out again with that link that we'd like you to go test out. We've also got a number of very useful materials available both on the VMware website as well as on the Amazon website. And so you can see the links there as well. If you'd like to understand migration strategies, pricing calculations, FAQs, and even release notes available about the service. Finally, I'd encourage you to engage us on social media. You can check us out at the hashtag VMWON AWS, so VMware on AWS, as well as on Twitter at VMware Cloud AWS. And so I thank you for your time this afternoon. We will now cut and go to a Q&A. And again, thank you for spending some time with us today.
For
for joining. We've now got time for some Q&A. I'll start taking questions off of the chat. The first one here is around regional availability. And so we are available in a number of regions today. The list can be actually found on our website at cloud.vmware.com. We are available in US West Oregon, US East North Virginia, Europe London, Europe Frankfurt, for now. And so we've got a very nice global footprint at this point, and we continue to add new regions on roughly a quarterly basis. So stay tuned for some announcements at VMworld next week. We'll be expanding the footprint even more. There's another question on the line around establishing a connection between on-prem and the SDDC. You can do this in a couple of different ways. It is not necessary to make a connection, but you can certainly do this. We support many different types of connectivity. The one we see most customers using is just a standard IPsec VPN, so terminating back to a firewall back in their own data center. We can also run traffic over AWS Direct Connect connections if you're looking for a higher capacity pipe. We also support layer 2 VPN. This is very useful if you're doing live vMotion connections back and forth. Again, support pretty much anything that can make an IPsec VPN tunnel can be connected to the SDDC. Let's see. There's another question here around is the question or is this nested virtualization? And the answer here is no. We run our environment on bare metal instances, and so we support the i3 bare metal instance at Amazon, and so there's no intermediate hypervisor or a para virtualization going on. Again, the purchase diameter is a whole host, and so that host is dedicated to your SDDC, and again runs on bare metal. There's another question here around migration and what tooling we have for doing migrations. We have a number of different ways to bring workloads into VMware Cloud on AWS. Probably the most popular option is an offering that's included in VMware Cloud on AWS. It's called Hybrid Cloud Exchange, and what that allows us to do is really do high volume moves very, very quickly. So you can bring up the Hybrid Cloud Exchange application, install a little bit of software in your on-prem data center, select the workloads you want to move, and bring them on in. Another way to do this is to use vCenter Hybrid Linked Mode. vCenter Hybrid Linked Mode allows you to manage the inventory both in your on-prem environment as well as your SDDC through a single pane of glass. And with that configuration set up, you can simply right-click your virtual machines and do a standard vMotion to bring them in. And so a lot of different ways to bring workloads in. We've got more information on this on the website, and you'll also find a number of blog articles and videos out there in doing this as well. It's a very, very simple, very straightforward process. Okay, scanning through for a few more questions here. Okay, I think we'll take one more question and then call it a wrap. So the question here is around what sort of
complexity you should expect. We have really made this this environment as simple to use as we possibly can, and so everywhere from onboarding all the way through deployment of the SDDC. Very straightforward process. You can actually do this very rapidly using a credit card. In bringing workloads, there's no need to refactor your virtual machines. You can simply shut them down and move them, or do the layer 2 VPN connections and do a live vMotion. And there's really very little effort in operating the environment, because again, this is just standard VMware core virtualization infrastructure. So vCenter Server, ESX, NSX, these are standard technologies that we find large parts of our customer base, and so operationally we're incredibly consistent. And if you know how to run vSphere, running an SDDC is exactly the same. Okay, with that, I think we've run through the questions that we've got. I'd like to again thank you for joining us today, and we'll see you soon.